Hello there and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're here every week discussing topical issues, and this time we have a fairly controversial issue. It deals with the death penalty and the issue of whether or not society should have the death penalty or not.
Yes, it seems like we are constantly hearing about executions taking place across the country and protests about that. The thought being that the death penalty should not be imposed. There's an equal number of people, or perhaps more, that think yes, it does serve a function. We're going to bring two people today, Wesley Lane, the District Attorney of Oklahoma County, and Bob Ravitz, the Public Defender in Oklahoma County, to debate it. And we'll ask you at the end of this show to register your vote about it.
Interesting to me that there are certain sections of the country where it's highly favored and certain sections of the country where it is not highly favored, that it's regionalized here in the 21st century. We're discussing the death penalty. Two really informed guests, and we'll get to it on The Verdict.
For one Oklahoma-based company, success didn't happen overnight. Initially, the days were long, 80-hour weeks common. As we grew, we wanted to share our success, and the ideals of corporate and civic responsibility found a welcome home. Today, we're the largest investor in the Sooner State and a source for exciting, new, high-quality jobs. We're Chesapeake Energy, committed to building a better Oklahoma.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Hi, I'm Court Diffie. With all of the change that has taken place in the car industry in the past decade here in Oklahoma, it's hard to find a family-run business anymore. One of the things that makes us different, that if you visit any one of our 3 locations, you're going to find one of our family members there ready to help you. Does that really make any difference? We really believe it does. So I invite you to come out and experience the Diffie family difference and decide for yourself.
He's gonna score. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. Go!
Satellite go out again?
Yeah, rain. But this is just as fun.
Don't live in satellite denial. Get the reliability you expect from Cox, your friend in the digital age.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers as always, and Kent's going to introduce our guests.
We are very pleased today to welcome back two individuals who have both been on our show before. Across the table to my right is Wesley Lane, the Oklahoma County District Attorney. Wes has debated on this show before, and he's going to do it again today. He's been 4.5 years as the principal district attorney, but was over 24 years as a prosecutor in Oklahoma County. He is currently the president of the Oklahoma District Attorneys Association. He did his undergraduate and his law work at the University of Oklahoma. Wes, welcome back.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
To my left is Bob Ravitz, longtime friend. Bob is the Oklahoma County Public Defender and has been for about 18 years. He did his undergraduate work at the University of Colorado and his law work at Oklahoma City University. He teaches at Oklahoma City University in a number of courses, in addition, one of which is a capital punishment course. He's, as is Wes, board member of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, and Bob's won many awards for his advocacy of the defendants in criminal matters. And Bob, welcome back for another appearance on The Verdict.
Thanks a lot, Kent.
Why don't we get started with just an opening statement from each of you. We're dealing with the death penalty, the pros and the cons. Wes, why don't you go first?
Well, let me just say this. This is an area in which principled people disagree on principle. Bob and I have a wonderful working relationship. We happen to disagree on this particular area, but it's one in which we and many others can have a civil discussion. But as a proponent of the death penalty, I have to look at it from an angle of that this is that there is a class of murderer, if you will, a class of individual whose crime of murder is so heinous, so atrocious, so despicable that really a civil society can only respond in one way. Many times opponents will say, well, gee, why not just life without parole? But the fact is that society is never completely safe from some individuals. Whether you're a prison guard or whether you believe that somebody's actually going to be left in prison, that's just not the way it works. Even in Oklahoma, we've had one member of the life without parole folks who has been recommended for clemency. So it's the only sure way that we have of ensuring the safety of the public.
Let me give Bob a minute to answer that question.
Well, thanks a lot, Mick. Mick, when we look at the death penalty, we have to remember certain names like Miller, Munson, Bowen, Williamson, Fritz. These are Oklahomans who spent years on death row and were released as being factually innocent of the crimes. When we consider the fact that innocent people have gotten the death penalty in Oklahoma, just since 2000, there have been 37 innocent people released from death row across the country. Not legal technicalities, but actual innocence. Currently, they're investigating 2 cases in Texas and 1 in Missouri where the people have actually been executed. Society can't live with themselves when we're executing innocent people, and that's why I'm against the death penalty.
Wes, let me ask you a question, and I'll ask Bob to respond to the same question. The death penalty was outlawed in this country for a number of years and has been reinstated as being an appropriate penalty. Was that a correct decision to reinstate it?
Absolutely, and just Bob was just getting through saying about 2 people that they believe were executed. There has been absolutely no evidence, none, that anybody, in fact, in the entire 20th century, that anybody was executed who was otherwise factually innocent. You mentioned the name of the one name I recognize, Clifford Henry Bowen, and we dispute his factual innocence for that matter. I remember when Mr. Macy tried that a number of years ago. So I think we have to be very cautious about the terms and phrases that are put out there, the actual innocence and the like. Make no mistake about it, we should be very cautious in how we approach the use of the death penalty. But also keep in mind that this penalty, as we see it between the years of 65 and 80, when there was a moratorium, we actually saw the homicide rate double during that period of time. When the death penalty was reinstituted, we can show statistically that the homicide rate in America went down by almost 50%.
Bob?
Well, I totally disagree with Wes's figures, and if Wes, as far as innocent people, he can look at the Chicago papers, the Houston papers. They're exactly talking about 2 innocent people, one of whom may have been executed because improper forensic science was applied to the case, and it may have been an accidental arson. So, and throwing out numbers of the 12 states that don't have capital punishment, 10 have lower homicide rates than any other country, any other states in the union. Now, why is that so? So I don't know where he's coming up with that figure, because it hasn't been shown. It hasn't been shown that it serves any purpose at all, and it's being applied arbitrarily. Fairness issue in the death penalty is unbelievably prevalent. A person just as guilty and just as bad in one county in Oklahoma gets a life sentence, and in another county gets death. In Kansas, they get death, and in Iowa, they get life. We have no rhyme or reason to what we're doing with the death penalty.
The death penalty obviously creates the elimination of a convicted criminal. Are there any other benefits to having the death penalty in your view, Bob?
Well, this is probably a good question for Wes. I'm sure it'll give him an opportunity to argue. Well, they say that it has 2 other values. One is deterrence. But if you look at all the studies, with some exceptions, there's a recent Colorado study that says differently, but almost all the studies that have looked at the deterrence have said there is no deterrent effect to the death penalty. Secondly, there is the issue of retribution. Mick, I can tell you one thing. If I was locked up in a cage for the rest of my life, which most individuals who get a life without parole sentence get and stay there unless the governor has a reason, a serious reason to commute the sentence, then I think that's ample punishment and ample retribution and deterrence.
Wes?
Well, I guess, again, I just have a real problem with thinking that somebody's actually going to stay in prison. I mean, we know that I think between in the last 30 years, 30,000 innocent people have been murdered by those who have murdered before. In other words, I believe it's 6.6% of released murderers murder again. In fact, I mean, I can give you a list of different Kenneth McDuff in Texas, Richard Marquetta in Oregon, Jack Henry Abbott in New York, Robert Lee Massey. I mean, the list goes on of individuals who were in prison for murder, released, whether they thought, like one of them was, that he was, in fact, had received the death penalty before, ends up going into a life sentence, gets released, murders again. I mean, the fact remains is that these individuals are dangerous. Whether it's to prison guards, or whether we believe under some sort of mistaken belief that these folks are going to be staying in prison. You know, another thing that we never count on is counting the cost of. I mean, it's like a rock in the pond. The people who are saved from being killed, the innocent people, because it is a deterrence. Bob and I disagree on whether this is a deterrence. Think of the lives that are not shattered because of the fact that somebody that considered himself, do I want to risk my own life in order to take this other person's life?
So you believe it is a deterrent?
Absolutely.
You believe it is not a deterrent?
It's not a deterrent. Murderers don't make cold, calculated decisions to, yes, I'm going to kill, or no, I'm not going to kill because of the death penalty. That's absurd. Most murders are split in second decisions, and contract killers, where it might arguably, we might arguably look at, they don't do that cost-benefit analysis that Wes talks about.
Need to get to our break. Obviously, a clear difference of opinion on that issue. More dealing with the death penalty. You're watching The Verdict. Mick Cornett, Kent Myers, and our guests Bob Ravitz and Wes Lane. We'll be right back.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
And Blankenship has stopped at the line of scrimmage. No gain on the play. Leaving it 4th and 7 on the Tiger 46-yard line. 38 seconds on the clock. The Tigers have no choice but to go for the Wiggins had to do the kicking. Here's the snap. And the kick is away.
RSM McGladry. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. RSM McGladry. In Oklahoma City, the phone number is 405-843-5311.
The Cox Channel. More sports. More fans. More cheerleaders. More fun. Nobody does more local sports, and nobody does it better.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. As always, our guests this week, Wes Lane and Bob Ravitz. We're discussing the death penalty. And Kent, at this segment, we're going to let each of them ask each other a question.
Yes, we think they can ask each other probably better questions than we can ask them.
I agree.
So, Bob, why don't you ask Wes a question?
Okay, Wes, you stated that...
Be gentle.
I'll be as gentle as you are to me, old buddy.
This is completely unrehearsed, as you can tell.
Wes, you stated earlier that nobody in the history of the 20th century was, and started the 21st century, was executed because they were innocent. If it was proven to you, beyond all doubt, that somebody that your office prosecuted was ultimately executed for a crime they didn't commit, would this change your opinion on the death penalty?
Probably not, and let me tell you why. Because I have had to do the math on that, and let me. It's something that I look at this as being, we're at war with people who want to murder us. Between 1976 to present, over 500,000 murders have taken place in America. That's almost twice as many as soldiers that were killed in the American military in World War II. So, and many of these individuals, sure, they are, it's heat of passion kind of stuff, but many of them are predators. And what I am concerned about is that if we are in combat, and if I sincerely believe, as I do, that the death penalty has a deterrent impact on crime, then my greatest concern is that, first of all, that we do everything that we possibly can do to ensure that no innocent person is harmed. But what I'm also seeing from the deterrence factor is that literally thousands of lives have been saved because of the imposition of the death penalty. So knowing that we should do everything, and in Oklahoma County it should be a rare event. It is a rare event compared to the numbers of actual homicides taking place. But we need to do everything we can to protect, and part of that is the deterrence of the imposition of the punishment.
Okay, Wes, your turn to turn around and ask a question to Bob.
Well, I know, as I said earlier, you had indicated that you didn't, or that you believe that most murders were committed, just instantaneously, and that is true, but many times it's not. And for this year's, this country avoided war with the Russians through the nuclear policy of mutually assured destruction. In other words, both sides were afraid enough of losing their life that they refused to pull the trigger on one another. Knowing that, and also by there being a number of studies reflecting that death penalty is a deterrent, how in the face of common sense can you say that the imposition of the death penalty has absolutely zero deterrent?
Oh, I think there could be an individual somewhere along the line that the death penalty actually deterred, but I think that is so rare in our system of justice. I've handled cases like this, Wes, for 25 years, and every murder case that I handled, I can assure you, they didn't make a cold, calculated determination that if I do this, I have to risk getting the death penalty. I've talked to a bunch of people who've committed horrible crimes where the individual didn't die, and the death penalty did not go into that calculation, whether to kill somebody or not to kill somebody. I think we can talk in the abstract all day about deterrence, but I think the end result is that the people that do commit these crimes do not go into that cost-benefit analysis that you're talking about. And since they don't, in my opinion, the death penalty does not deter.
Time for some closing statements. Wes, why don't you gather your thoughts and make a compelling case as to why the prosecutor should have the option of the death penalty.
Well, again, I think that probably one of the most important things I can speak to is that most folks would agree that when necessity demands it, there's a moral justification for taking the life of another person. In other words, using deadly force. One of those would be, of course, in your own self-defense. Another one would be in the use in a military frame. But another, finally, is in the saving the life of another person. And if in fact the deterrent, in fact there's article after article, or study after study, Clemson University, Emory University, Colorado University. In fact, interestingly enough, in the Colorado University study, which found that for each additional execution, there's a decrease in the number of homicides by about 5. And each additional commutation, in other words, where somebody is taken off of death row, increases the number of homicides by the same amount. Now that is a study by opponents to the death penalty. And it's increasingly, we can, as I say, can go through a number of studies from different universities. And so if, in fact, we believe that there is a moral justification to prevent and save the life of another, then, in my view, that is a very distinct moral justification to impose the death penalty. You know, to say, and I would dispute with Bob saying that this is just a very rare event. I mean, I can think of cases, just like he can think of cases, I can think of cases in Oklahoma County, just Oklahoma County alone, in which in one particular instance, an individual actually was stunned to discover that the murder he had done took place in Oklahoma County. He thought it was in a different county. And his response to that was, oh my God, Macy is going to fry me. Now, if that's not deterrence, I don't know what is.
Bob, closing statements. Why should we not have the death penalty in our society?
Okay. Mick, we lead Oklahoma is third in the United States in the number of people who have been executed since 1976. I don't feel any safer than I did in 1977 or 1978. The United States is third in the world in 2002, the last year counted, the number of people that were executed. The two countries that lead us are China and Iran. They execute people for speaking out against their government, for adultery, for blasphemy. It's unbelievable the crimes that governments can execute people for if they so choose. But despite that, I understand that there are people that believe in the death penalty, but they need to look at what actually happens. Innocent people have been executed. I'm sitting here with an article from the Chicago Tribune. A Texas man executed on disproved forensics. We all know about the forensic chemist in Oklahoma City who put innocent people in prison for numerous years. Jeffrey Todd Pierce for 15 years for a crime he didn't commit. Can you imagine if the girl had died? Jeffrey Todd Pierce would have been executed. 37 times, as I said, since 2002, we've taken people off of death row who were innocent. I don't think it's worth the risk, especially today, where we have a system of justice, we have prisons, where we can lock up somebody for life without the possibility of parole. Lock them up in a cage, feed them through a window. No human contact whatsoever. We can protect prison guards, we can protect prisoners, we can protect people in society. We don't need a death penalty. Thank you.
Bob Ravitz, Wesley Lane, thank you very much for coming on the very compelling arguments.
Thanks,
Kent and I'll have a final word when we get back.
That land next door was a mess. Take more than a lawnmower to revive that land. I heard the oil and natural gas people was cleaning up old oil sites, and it wouldn't cost us a plug nickel. Oh yes, sir, it was quite a revival. The whole church showed up, want to make a playground for the kids. It sure is a blessing.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities, parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
Hockey is back, and it's on the Cox Channel. The Oklahoma Ford Turnpike Series features the Oilers and the Blazers exclusively on the Cox Channel. Whether it's in Tulsa or Oklahoma City, you're covered with the Cox Channel.
Merry Christmas, the rookie Jared Barraza.
Nobody does more sports. Nobody does it better. The Cox Channel is home to the Oklahoma Ford Turnpike Series. Game on.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers here, wrapping up our show on the death penalty and trying to offer opinions on whether or not society should have it. A stimulating debate between Bob Ravitz and District Attorney Wes Lane.
Yes, as a matter of fact, Mick, I have actually observed in the courtroom Wes Lane trying a capital punishment case and Bob Ravitz both trying a capital punishment case, not against each other at the time I observed, but they are both very fine advocates, as is evidenced by their discussion here today. And they're very fine gentlemen. They get along well. They agree to disagree and go on. We have had the argument about the death penalty for many years. I'm sure we will for many years after this show. This won't settle it for anyone probably, but we want to know what you think about it. This show is called The Verdict for good reason. We want to know what your verdict is about whether or not we should have the death penalty. We do have a question up on our website, and we hope you'll go there and vote about whether or not we should have the death penalty. Let's talk just a minute about our next show. Okay. Tom Price from Chesapeake Energy is going to join us and talk about the oil and gas business in Oklahoma and in the nation, and what's going on with oil and gas pricing and how that affects Oklahomans both positively in some ways and negatively in some ways. We think you'll enjoy this show next week. We hope you'll tune in.
You know, we have made great strides in the last 20 years or so to try to diversify Oklahoma's economy, but we are still energy-based. It is our largest segment.
Yes, and with the price of oil nationally and internationally, and natural gas for that matter, being as high as it is, that further enhances Oklahoma's position to put more resources in that area.
That's right. Economically, times are good.
Yes, thank goodness.
But as we all know in the oil industry, it fluctuates.
It's cyclical.
And our state's history has reflected that. Well, let me give you the website information on how you can go to our website and cast an opinion on today's show. We dealt with the death penalty and whether or not you think society should have the death penalty. The website address is theverdict.tv. Please go there and respond to our question, and on a future show, we'll discuss your answers. We also want you to go there to give us an idea for a future show that you'd like to see. That's going to do it for this show. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next time on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.